it's a really American story. You've got these guys that, you know, that they really did save the world. You know, guys from all over the country, guys from the city, guys from the country. You know, before World War II, people didn't move around that much. So these guys that this story's about, they lived in the same neighborhood. 3 of them Jewish, 1 Italian, but basically they're living like, you know, in a kind of a ghetto in St. Louis. And then they go off to the war. And where they're thrown into an army with a whole bunch of other, with Italians and with Cajuns and with, you know, boys from the Oklahoma Dust Bowl, and sort of everybody kind of merged together in this great kind of melting pot. And, you know, they have this incredible and really traumatic and really difficult experience, you know, in any experience in combat, anybody at any war. And they come back to an America that now wants to celebrate and wants to forget and wants to put not only the war but the Depression and everything else behind it. And it's a new world, and it's a happy world. It's the 50s, and it's tract houses and new developments, and you know your heroes, you won the war, come back, everything's great. You know, so they're really riding that wave of American history, but they're also, you know, there's absolutely no mechanism for them to talk about what happened to them. They're supposed to be enjoying their lives, and you know, for a lot of them, the stuff that happened to them in the war never really got dealt with, never really got solved. And it takes the whole, you know, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, all of that turmoil, which is also sort of central to our story, to kind of start to bring this stuff to the surface for these guys. They are guys. They're tough guys. They're not. Their first impulse is never to complain. You know, their first impulse is to kind of take it like a man. And you know, at one extreme, you know, you've got Patton, and you've got that archetype of, like, you know, the American wants to win and hates losing and is a fighter and all of that, and that, you know, that sort of tough guy motivation. But of course, you know, they were destroyed, some of them. Not just the people, I mean, you know, obviously people that died, but the people that, you know, went through that combat, their lives were shattered. And they couldn't complain about it. They didn't complain about it. And in that sense, and so I think what happened to them, you know, is that the problems kind of leaked out in other ways. And they're, you know, I don't know how to say this because this is just in the script, but, you know, they fight big, they dream big, and as one of them says, they fuck up big. And that's maybe a strain of kind of American culture that this place celebrates, that is a little bit, that we're in a different moment now. And we're now in the moment of, you know, of having a lot more understanding, for the good, I think, that, you know, that there is such a thing as post-traumatic stress disorder, that there is such a thing as, you know, a wound that you can't see. And maybe if those guys had come back into a world in which that was acceptable, I don't know, the whole course of their lives would have been different. It's a true story. That's what everybody should know. This is really based on a true story. This is about the playwright's father, who told him he couldn't write the play. He asked permission to write the play, and his father said no. But I think he's, you know, now he's coming, and he's really, you know, he's actually was, I think, very moved by what came out. But I mean, this was actually in the process of writing this play, and, you know, I don't know if you're going to interview Willy, but he can tell you more about this. You know, his dad was kind of coming up with stuff and finding stuff out that, and remembering things that he hadn't thought about. So the act of creating this play actually brought this one person out of the, you know, the millions of people that fought, you know, was part of his journey toward kind of understanding what happened, and memory and recovery and all that stuff. Because certainly what I want this production to do is to honor those guys, and to honor those guys in a way that the character, the person that the main character is based on, is very, he kind of rejects the whole Greatest Generation mythology. You know, he doesn't want to march in the parades. He's kind of not interested in being seen as a hero, because he knows, having been on the ground, that he did what he had to do, and he went where he was told to go, and a lot of it was confused, and a lot of it was luck, and, you know, a lot of it was by accident, and, you know, like the guys that got blown up, as he says, are the guys that should get the medals. And so, you know, he's not being sentimental about his own story. And that, in particular, I want to honor. Because that, I think, does justice to these kids, again, these kids that save the world, but that doesn't make them saints. You know, that they were in a place and a time in which that was thrust on them. And you know, they stood up to it and they responded to it, but it's not like they left that experience untouched. And that's the other part of the story that needs to get told, and is getting told now. I think that, you know, it's really amazing if you look at the stuff we just watched in rehearsal. We watched Sergeant Bilko, because there's a little Sergeant Bilko in it, but also just to look at, you know, what were people doing about the Army and military after the war. And it's totally goofy. You know, it's a comic mode. And it was, you know, it's not really until very recently, you know, you think of films like Saving Private Ryan and then the great Band of Brothers documentary that we've watched and has kind of really influenced this production in a way that people are trying to look at the ugliness of that conflict and the brutality of it, and to get past just the sense of, okay, the veterans are heroes, and you know, and they saved the world and they did the right thing. That's all true, but you know, it's just as important to tell their whole story, you know, and that, you know, they saw and did horrifying things, as anybody does that's in combat. And I think, you know, that's why I'm excited, and I think it's important to be doing this play now, because I think, you know, I mean, to not get into the politics of today too much, but, you know, war is hell, and you got to really know why you're doing it if you're going to put people in that situation. I mean, like, you know, the Abu Ghraib and all that stuff, that's not a surprise. That stuff happens when you put kids, which these, you know, 18-year-old kids, in situations in which they're being shelled and shot at and, you know, exposed to the absolute worst that the human species has to offer. So maybe that's what we can do with this play and with, you know, the war documentary and all this stuff, is to bring the sort of the heroic thing together with the reality of what war is. And I think that Willy's tried to do that, and I think that his dad would approve. So in that sense, that's the responsibility I feel, is to try and tell the story in that way. Now, I don't know him personally, so I don't know.